Sean here with BaseMint Comics. It is not Wednesday. Tea is made, and so that can only mean one thing, that it's time for another Corner Box Classics. And Corner Box Classics is, I have obviously on any Wednesday that I could throughout my life pedaled up to my shop from the time that I was a small child to last Wednesday. And to this Wednesday, even though it's going to be 100 degrees again outside. So when I started reading all my comics through, I was like, you know what I should do? I should read everything as though I was a kid at that time, 63, 64, 65, up until now. And we are up to August 24th, 1982. So if I was a youngster on August 24th, 1982, pedaling up to the shop in my headphones on my Walkman, I would have had Yazoo's Upstairs at Eric's, this synth pop masterpiece released August 20th, 1982, blaring in my headphones as I pedaled up to my comic book shop. Everyone should be familiar with that record, but if you are not, listen to it on whatever thing you listen to. I'm not a big streamer. I'm a big, obviously, I would imagine that most of us are physical media people. And so I own this in multiple formats, CDs and cassettes and this vinyl and so on and so forth. And I'm a bit of a double dipper when it comes to albums, because you never know when the old EMP is going to hit and if I have to hook up a record player to a bicycle chain or something. So it's, what would I have been listening to at that point, and what would I have picked up on the spinner rack that was released on August 24th, 1982. That's the whole hook of the show. It's not just me drinking tea or whatever. So, August 24th, 1982. If I had pedaled up to the shop, first book I would have grabbed off the stands would have been Daredevil number 189, Siege, released August 24th, 1982, written and penciled by the great Frank Miller, inked and colored by Klaus Jensen, equally great, and lettered by Joseph Rosen, who, also great. I don't want to, besmirch any letterers. I have my favorites. I'm looking at you, Tom Orzechowski. It was interesting. When I read this the other night, I was like, I sort of breeze through Daredevil faster than I do the other stuff. And that is often a complaint that I have for new books, is like, I burn through this stuff. It takes me 5 minutes to read it. Not even that. It takes me 3 minutes to read a comic book now. And I'm like, there's something about this book being particularly cinematic. And this is not like a swipe against anything else. It's just like Miller at the time was on something. And I mean, just like not, I don't know, maybe it was. But just even this opening, the title page, just the ninjas in the shadow, the one light on in the building, the rain, it's like I breeze through it reading wise. It's a quick read because it flows in such a solid, you could, Disney Netflix didn't need to hire a storyboarder because Miller and Jansen had already done it. You just follow the comic book storyboards. It's perfect. Look at that. Look at that title page. I don't even need to talk about the rest of the issue. I will, but I don't need to. So in the last issue, Black Widow was very dead. And so the ninjas with Stick, the good guys, which look oddly like hand ninjas, just dressed in white, they revive her back to life. And Stick is basically they don't really give an explanation as to how this is done. And there's a part of me that's like, oh, comics, cool. But I wouldn't mind getting some type of explanation as to why Natasha was dead at the end of last issue. And then some ninja just pushes his life force in. I don't know. But Natasha meets Stick in this, and he calls her Toots. And there's a very great panel where she's like, don't call me Toots. And I appreciated that. And that is when Stick's guys realize that the hand is there and make pretty quick work of the hand ninjas. You know, it's great. I mean, Miller ninja fight sequences, it doesn't get much better than that, you know? You get multiple pages of Natasha back at the top of her game now that she is alive and kicking. Simple Minds reference. And, you know, it's literally just 6 pages of fantastic panels of ninjas and Daredevil and Stick and the Black Widow, and there should be nothing else that needs to be said about this issue to get, if you don't own the Miller Daredevil run, now you've got an excuse to go to the back issue bins and try to put together a run. Stick goes to take out the hand ninjas and then grossly sort of explodes in this fight scene, and so he is gone now. And I will say this, as you're supposed to like feel it, but the problem is that like not 8 pages earlier, one of the ninjas was just able to inexplicably bring Natasha Romanoff back to life. So as much as I'm supposed to like feel for Matt Murdock in this moment, I'm like, something tells me that Stick's going to be able to be brought back as well. So cut to they're back at the apartment getting cleaned up from their battle with the, you know, ninjas. Natasha is sort of, you know, they're kind of discussing their old relationship. And, you know, Matt brings up the fact that, you know, he's with Heather now. Heather then shows up and she's absolutely wasted, and it's pretty awkward because, like, Matt is just not seeing the fact that she is, like, not into this relationship from what I can see. And clearly it appears that Natasha is very aware from the eyes that she's given. And then it quickly cuts to the two of them taking off into the night. Fantastic little, like, I want to say black and white, but it looks more yellow tinted, which I'm sure is the street lights, and is just a, like, hats off to Jensen there in the coloring department and the inking department to make that look so, oh, man. God damn. Look at just the buildings back there. That's such a great shot. Man. What a time. So, Natasha runs into Foggy, and basically they start having, like, the Natasha and Daredevil split up, and Natasha goes and sees Foggy, and is basically like they're both expressing their concern for Matt. And then the two of them, this is some bullshit. The two of them concoct, well, it's more Foggy. He basically is like, hey, you're a spy. How good are you at forgery? And then after he asks this question, it cuts to Heather getting a note from Matt that, like, hey, I can't do it. I'm sorry. I don't love you and I can't marry you. Okay. And so her phone's ringing off the hook and she's sobbing in her apartment. And clearly it is Matt calling her, and she's not answering because he got a letter. Matt, I can't marry you. I don't love you. Never want to see you again. Please don't call me. And I'm just like, that is damn Foggy. That is cold. And so then Black Widow and Daredevil, well, spoiler, meet back up, and then they basically explain that, hey, the hand is raising another one from the dead. And then we get this great, like, next issue. And so, I mean, there again, like, in 1982, listening to that Yaz record, which in a weird way probably would have worked great. a little dance number as people slice through Hand Ninjas Never Hurt Anybody. But just, I can't imagine. There are Wednesdays now, and there have been Wednesdays throughout the years that I have absolutely been like pedaling up the shop faster on a particular, like this Wednesday. I'm super excited about going to the shop because there are a ton of books that I'm looking forward to this Wednesday. And so, like, you know, you're pedaling a little faster, Yazoo's blaring a little louder, and I am 100% certain that that's what would have been happening if I had been pedaling up to the shop in 1982 to grab Daredevil. Next book, one of my favorites, Dazzler, number 22, The Sisterhood, released August 24th, 1982, written by Danny Fingeroth, pencils by Frank Springer, inks by Vince Colletta, letters by Janice Chang, and colors by Don Warfield. I know that there's probably people out, I know that this book gets a lot of, like, on the internet, it's a lot of like, ooh, Dazzler. I genuinely enjoy the hell out of this title. This is not my first rodeo. I've probably read the complete Dazzler run 3 or 4 times now at this point over the years. And I genuinely, sincerely love this book. It is soap opera. It's melodramatic. I dig all of the musical stuff in it. You know, the trying to get gigs, the having to deal with scumbag, you know, promoters and cutting records and all that type of stuff. It's just it's all right up my alley. And yeah, so I occasionally when it comes to this book, I feel like it's necessary that I be like, I sincerely enjoy this, and like, it's absurd and it's wacky, but I truly, like, I get a kick out of it every time that I read it. So I just need to make that known, that it's not like, you know how sometimes people like read something and or watch things and it's like they're watching it to make fun of it, and that's not really, that is not my cup of tea. I think hate watching things or hate reading, like, it's dumb. It's a waste of time. Read, watch, enjoy things that you like. Don't, you know. And so I just need to get it out there because I know there's loads of people that are like, remember that issue where she took on Galactus? That's dumb. No, it wasn't. It was great. Just as great as Warren Worthington getting attacked by hawks for some reason. And so it is quite a few pages of an aerial battle of our boy Warren Worthington outmaneuvering some hawks that are going after him. Finally defeats them and is like, well, that was crazy. I gotta go back to my place and like take a shower, think about this, because that was wild. Who could have sent those after me? He's like running through some X-Men villains, running through some Champions villains. Hasn't quite yet joined the Defenders because he's too busy pissing off Ken in Dazzler, trying to get with Allison Blair. So Allison is on her way to cut a new record today. Lance Bannon, her bodyguard or whatever, is driving her, and there is a gal on roller skates listening to music who doesn't hear them coming to her and running into a traffic jam. So she eventually like has to use her powers on the sly and winds up blasting this poor girl's Walkman. And I gotta say, if I was pedaling up to the bike shop listening to Yaz and somebody blasted my Walkman, I'd be pretty bummed out about it. And then the cop, like, Lance starts honking at the traffic jam, and so a cop saunters over and basically starts giving him the business. And then the cop realizes, like, oh, holy shit, it's Dazzler, I love you. And so they then get a police escort, which I imagine if I was in the rest of that the traffic jam, I'd be pretty pissed off that someone else was getting preferential treatment, but that's a discussion for another day. And she makes it to the recording studio, and this is this part I get a ginormous kick out of because you know, records now, everything's kind of Pro Tools and digital, and if you've ever recorded to tape, like 2-inch reel-to-reels, it's a ginormous pain in the ass, and it's great, it's cool, it sounds warmer, it's fantastic. There aren't that many friend of mine has one of those in his recording studio that they've used for years and years and years, and there aren't many of those machines left. And watching someone who understands how to use it, you know, you mess up, you got to rewind the tape, you got to get it, you got to splice it, like you've got to know, you know, it makes a cool sound when you whir it back. It's all interesting. Anyways, point is if you have ever been making records and get old clam hands while you're doing your thing, and you gotta, you know, do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again, and you're just hearing the same 30, 45 seconds over and over again until you get it exactly right, that can be incredibly frustrating. And so I enjoyed these panels because it is Allison dealing with kind of a ball-busting producer who just really wants to get everything exactly correct. So the band's getting frustrated because they got to keep on recutting things because it's not perfect. And so having a musical background, I thoroughly enjoy that aspect of the book. I'm sure if this was something else that I wasn't interested in, some slice of life thing, probably wouldn't enjoy it as much. But this, I actually get just as much of a kick out of that type of stuff as I do the super heroics. So there's that. Cuts to Ken, who's working, you know, no big thing. And then our villains are revealed in their hawk plan. And it is a very frumpy looking rogue. I always laugh at the, like, so it's Mystique, Destiny, and Rogue, the sisterhood of evil mutants here, and they're kind of going over their plan where, you know, they're going after Warren and they're going after Allison. Then it cuts over to Allison's dad, who's sending a bunch of stuff that he'd held on to of Allison's mother now that they've kind of patched everything up in previous issues. Then it cuts to Allison's mother, who's meeting with her other daughter to finally reveal to her that the Dazzler is her stepsister. So there you have that. Then Ken is out with Allison, and I don't know, it's weird. It's one of those things where, like, they get into an argument because he's working all the time, and he's basically like, what do you want me to do? These people need my attention, like my clients are important. And Allison kind of is like, oh, don't be such a square, right? And so she goes back to her place, kind of pisses off Ken. They go their separate ways. She goes back to her place, and she's like, oh, I shouldn't have been that hard on Ken, but you know what? Maybe I should talk to somebody else about this. And I'm like, dude, she's gonna go after Warren. Like, it's always Warren. Like, not cool, Allison. And lo and behold, where does she wind up? But she winds up at Warren Worthington's apartment, or penthouse probably. And she walks in because the door's unlocked or whatever, which is dumb because he's getting attacked by hawks. And then he puts her in a headlock. And then they discuss the fact that, like, hey, somebody's after us. And so they go take off to do this and are followed in a, like, again, hilarious. I don't know why, but just them floating around in this little like, where'd they get the helicopter? Probably the government, because Mystique's working with the government. And they go after Allison and Dazzler, get into a huge fight. Mystique shapeshifts into Candy Southern, which is, like, also kind of bogus, because it's like, yeah, Warren, you're supposed to be in a relationship with Candy, not swooning after Allison. And so then Allison goes after Rogue. Rogue winds up, like, catching her, and it's basically like, oh, cool, little firework powers, and then tosses her off a cliff. This does not do her in, because Warren rescues her, and then basically, like, they beat up Warren. And, yeah, it's just a punch-up between the sisterhood of evil mutants. And Warren and Dazzler, and they eventually get away back to Allison's apartment where they're recovering from this, now realizing who the bad guys are that are after them. And as that's going on, there's a knock at the door, and Warren's like, holy shit, it's probably Rogue again. Like, cool it. And it is revealed to be Allison's sister. So that's where more of your melodrama comes in. So, you know, you get Allison having to do 52 takes of a song, which never happened to Allison Moyet. And then, you know, you get them punching it up with the Sisterhood of Evil Mutants. And then it's back to melodrama with the sister reveal. Like, what more could you want? This is daytime soap opera in a 32-page comic. It's August, which means it's the summertime, which means annuals. Invincible annual, Iron Man annual number 5 for War and Remembrance, released August 24th, 1982, written by Peter B. Gillis, pencils by Jerry Bingham, inks by Daniel Green, letters by Diana Albers, and colors by Beth Furman. One of the things that I like about kind of keeping track of who does what in my comics, not only helps me familiarize myself with what, like, writers, artists, inkers, letterers, colorists that I enjoy more than others, to kind of as my, you know, when I was a kid, it was like, I bought comics because I liked the characters. And as I got older, I was like, oh, I should be following some creatives that I enjoy as well onto other things. And I got to admit, I have not seen the name Jerry Bingham often, but as I was reading this, I was like, holy smokes, I really dig that dude's pencils. So I just wanted to say that. I was like, the art in this annual, come on, T, kick in, was a blast. It was really good. Starts off, Wakanda, Black Panther, jumping around, doing his thing. And he is attacked by what I can only assume at this point is another tribe or something in Wakanda. I am not well versed in jungle action, meaning the comic. I have obviously read any appearance of the Black Panther up to this point in Fantastic Four and Avengers. But as far as going back and, like, procuring any jungle action comics, I have not done that. So my my understanding of Wakanda is basically built around movies and appearances in Fantastic Four and the Avengers. So he eventually defeats these tribesmen, and you quickly realize, like, towards the end, he, like, takes off his mask, and you realize that they're his bodyguards, and that this has just been, like, a sparring exercise. And so then it cuts to Iron Man in this building, and there's these other guys surrounding him, and they're in suits, and they're blasting him with ray guns and different types of, you know, like, sonic disruptors, things like that. And you quickly realize, oh, hey, it was a cool parallel, because, like, clearly Black Panther was training with his bodyguards, and then you get sort of the same amount of page weight to Iron Man doing kind of the same thing with some Stark employees, and I thought that was pretty cool. So then it turns out that we're back at Wakanda. It's after midnight, and now there is another tribe who has attacked a Stark building that is in Wakanda. It's like a Wakandan research facility that is working in conjunction with Stark International. And so this is brought to T'Challa's attention because Tony Stark is on his way to Wakanda to oversee this research facility, and it has been attacked. So then Stark arrives, and, you know, Stark's like, oh, I don't need all the pomp and circumstance. And I had a moment where I was kind of taken out of the story with this, because I started thinking about the fact that, like, at this point, I know most of the Avengers know that Tony is Iron Man, but I find at this point the like T'Challa doesn't know that he's Iron Man. I don't know, it just sort of bugged me. It's dumb that it would bug me, but it bugged me. But basically, T'Challa's like, hey, like, of course there's going to be some pomp and circumstance. Like, I've appreciated the comfort of Avengers Mansion and, like, your funding that as I go through this. So, of course, like, I'm going to roll out the red carpet for this. And so then they go through the whole thing. And then when they're behind closed doors, this kind of shifted it a little bit for me. Because suddenly, like, T'Challa's like, hey, when's Iron Man getting here? And that sort of is where I was like, oof. Like, I kind of wish that because, like, Tony is just sort of like, oh, he's going to sneak in at some point. It's like, really? Like, he's just going to sneak in to Wakanda, and T'Challa's cool with that? I think he'd want to know how. And, like, but we know that Iron Man, the suitcase is just sitting there on the bed. Anyways, so then they're having a, feast, and Tony starts hitting on a Wakandan lady, which really pisses off some of the other Wakandans there. And then Rhodey, who is, I can only imagine from that little tiny panel flipping through a Playboy, he is visited by a Wakandan woman who starts kind of giving him the eyes and telling him she's going to take care of him. Tony takes off with the woman that he's been chatting up at the dinner. And like I said, some of the Wakandans are referring to him as a foreign snake. And then particularly an older diplomat from Wakanda is kind of like, how dare... it's like, to allow a woman of our tribe to walk off with an American, a white man with such a notorious reputation, it is a shame on Wakanda. But what we've realized in a few panels earlier is the woman is actually like, they're on a mission. And like, she's just like going along with the act. And Rhodey, we quickly realize, has been attacked by Madam Slay. Killer name, by the way. And so then all hell starts to break loose, and the bad tribesmen show up and kill T'Challa. And I was just like, well, that sucks. That happened. So T'Challa is dead. They give him a funeral, and we realize that the baddie behind the other tribe that is going after the Stark Research Facility and going after T'Challa's throne is none other than Eric Killmonger. And so we then realize, and I appreciated the fact of how quickly this was handled, Iron Man is with T'Challa. T'Challa is not dead. It was a life model decoy. And they are off to head into that research facility and kind of take on the other tribesmen who have sort of taken over this area. And it becomes this, again, Jerry Bingham's pencils are fantastic throughout all of this. Like, this is, I mean, it's just really good stuff. So there is a fight between Iron Man and the tribe, and Eric Killmonger and T'Challa. And Tony takes note of this ring that Killmonger is wearing during the battle. And, I mean, this is fantastic, because it's literally just pages and pages of Iron Man versus Madam Slay and Black Panther versus Killmonger. And there's a whole, they're trying to set off this, like, metal bomb that's gonna, like, it's like a vibranium bomb that would mess up everything. Like, it's, you know, it's pretty heavy. Basically, if this thing goes off, like, it's going to mess up the world. And so during this battle, as Tony is like figuring out a way to stop this anti-metal vibranium thing from going into overload and exploding, as he's finishing that up, it's this great, like, he's going through it up here to stop this from happening, while T'Challa down here is taking on Killmonger, and they're basically mirroring. I thought that was cool compared to the mirroring of the first issue, or the beginning of the issue. And it is quickly realized by T'Challa that, like, Killmonger was just an animated corpse the entire time, and it kind of shows that ring disappear, and you realize that the Mandarin was the one behind reanimating Eric Killmonger's body and trying to set off this vibranium explosion to destroy Wakanda and the rest of the world. So, like, one and done, but it clearly sets up the fact that Mandarin is back, and that's cool, and that's exactly what an annual should be. Just like a kind of self-contained, fun, summer blockbuster-y thing. And that's what that was. I can get behind that. Yeah, that was worth $1 in 1982. Kazar the Savage, number 21. It's a Jungle Out There, released August 24th, 1982. Written by Bruce Jones, penciled by Ron Frenz, inks by Melt Candido, letters by Janice Chang, colors by George Roussos, and a cover by Ron Frenz and Armando Gil. Spidey's on the cover of that. It's got that going for it. Here's the thing. I got a soft spot for Kazar. I've gone over it a bunch. I don't need to delve back into it. Part of the reason why I picked up this run, because initially I only had a smattering of issues here and there, particularly the first appearance of Belasco. But I dig the Savage Land. And so I was like, oh yeah, I'll find a run of this relatively cheap online, put it together, add it to Cornerbox Classics, because I want to read some Tales of the Savage Land. I'm 21 issues into this series, and like in the first issue, they like find another area of the Savage Land that's not really the Savage Land, and they spend like the first 15 issues in that. And then from there, they've just gone to New York, and I just want them to go in. I just want them to go to the Savage Land. That's all. I was really hoping for a series of Kazar in the Savage Land, but really, it has not been that. These last couple issues it's been good. It's just not what I wanted. Like I wish. I mean, I don't wish, because then they would have taken my idea. But if there had been somebody out there doing Cornerbox Classics before me, and they had talked about this Kazar thing, I would know that most of it takes place in New York and some other place, and I'd be like, oh, that's not the Savage Land story that I want. But it's written well, it's drawn well, it's inked well, it's been fun, and this issue opens up with Kazar versus Kraven the Hunter, and that's a blast. And so that's been carrying over from the last issue, and basically like Kazar gets the best of Kraven, launches him off the side of a building, and then grabs onto him, and Shauna is basically like, drop him, don't worry about it. Kazar's about to go over the side, so she has to then go and rescue Kazar, and that's when I cannot think of her name right now for the life of me, but that other lady who's basically the one that sent Kraven after, goes to kill them, and then they start falling, and it's pretty interesting. So they obviously, like, they're all falling to their death, and then they are saved by Spider-Man, and this pisses Kraven off. And Spidey is like not, he's pretty upset about this, clearly, in this issue. Starts taking on Kraven, and that's when Shauna is basically like, would you two dorks knock it off? And like realize that Kazar is actually really hurt because he had a bullet to the head, and like then he was taking on Kraven, and then Kraven starts to feel bad because he's like, geez, I didn't realize this guy was like wounded when I was fighting him, and he even tried to save my life, so now he's feeling bad. So it's sort of like everyone is suddenly kind of on the same page, and just that whole thing was kind of interesting. And so then Shauna goes to try to like get help, and it appears as though Kraven has like stabbed Kazar, but really like Spider-Man's like, no, he didn't stab him. He wound up like doing a, mystical jungle thing to start to try to heal him. And that's basically like, it's him off to a hospital. Kraven takes off. Spider-Man takes off. And then Peter shows up at the hospital. Because, of course he does. And he's like, hey, I'm pals with Spider-Man. And he told me about your plight. And so then they go to Central Park. And I did enjoy Shauna's, like, explanation of Central Park. Where she was just like, she's like, this is a little more like it. Not quite the Savage Land, but at least there's a bit of green. And I remember, like, the first time that I ever was in New York and made, like, I walked over to Central Park, and it's just, it's awesome. And so, I don't know, this panel just struck me. And so then sort of Shauna starts to explain their entire history, her history of, like, leaving the Savage Land, coming back, and kind of goes over their entire relationship, which is kind of nice to have this, like, I don't know, like this reminiscing moment between Shauna where she's explaining their relationship to Peter. Gets pretty X-rated, which I was like, Pete probably doesn't need to know all that. And then she basically, like, they go back to the hospital, and the doctor's like, oh, that was, like, you guys, sorry. Horrible bedside manner on this doctor, by the way, because he's basically like, oh yeah, he passed 6 minutes ago. We lost him. And then there's a great backup story, the Zabu one that's been going on about him kind of bonding with Kazar, and I just think that's a great splash page. The story's been fine. It's like a good little backup story, and I enjoyed it. This issue was saved on the Spider-Man appearance alone. Otherwise, I'd be getting pretty annoyed at the... I suppose it's probably meant to be like a fish out of water story, but I was just, like I said, I was just really hoping for Kazar in the Savage Land, in Kazar the Savage, and that hasn't happened enough for me. So I imagine if I had pedaled up to the shop and was buying Kazar off the rack, I probably, much like Micronauts, would have thrown it back on the spinner rack. However, this Marvel 2-in-1 number 94, The Power Trap, August 24th, 1982, written by David Anthony Kraft, pencils by Ron Wilson, inks by Ricardo Villamonte, letters by Joseph Rosen, and colors by George Roussos. I would have kept on picking up. This had to be the height of Arcade Mania. It's a great... oh, man. This is... I am blanking on, like, but this is a cover that Sequential Artifacts Bobby needs to have. Because it's the POV cover. It's a POV cover. Anyways, if you haven't checked out Sequential Artifacts, it is a fantastic YouTube channel where he is making us all look like it's just really good. It's like one of those things where I'm like, everybody needs to be watching this. And he has a whole episode about POV covers, and there you have it. There's one, and it's a good one. Plus, like, the colors of it are great. Just the way that I don't know. I dig it. And one of the things that I like about it is, like, it opens up with this little, like, maze thing and the power trap thing, and opens up with Alicia walking down the street, and she is thought bubbling like, oh, Ben's doing this, and he was pissed that I wanted to walk back to my studio because he's always with the Fantastic Four and everything always goes bad with them, and he thinks that I can't just walk down the street without being attacked. And so, like, the second I read that, I was like, she's about to get attacked. And sure enough, there's some youths that are paying attention to her, catcalling, kind of to themselves, not so much to her. But this is very warriors come out and play. And one of them clocks that she's blind, and they start roughing her up, which is You know, obviously that's shitty. Like, all of it's shitty. And then they start messing with her stuff, and then they basically decide that they're going to take her into this abandoned building and do unspeakable things to her. And then from inside the building, they start getting a ton of bricks thrown at them, which is, you know, the least that they deserve. So they take off, and Alicia realizes that she has been saved by this fella. He quickly puts together that she is blind, gathers her things, and she's like, hey, can you walk me back to my studio? Because my stupid boyfriend was right, and I shouldn't be walking the streets of New York alone. They get back to the apartment. He's impressed by the statues, but he slowly starts going on and on and on about how he's being, like, tracked by people or followed by people, so on and so forth. And so Alicia does her thing where she touches his face. I thought this was hilarious because she does the whole thing to make a sculpture out of him, and then in the next panel he's clean shaven, and she didn't do that. That was just an error on good old Ron Wilson's part. And the thing that Ben was doing why he couldn't walk her home was because he was lugging marble back to her studio so that she could work on it. And so he, of course, in typical Ben Grimm fashion, opens the door just as this dude, paranoid that people are following him, bails out the window. And so Ben, of course, in the most Ben Grimm way, which is super, like, at this point, I have read every single Fantastic Four issue, Strange Tales issue, Marvel 2-in-1 issue. So, like, I have my basis of Ben Grimm covered. And I am tired of him doubting Alicia's love for him. It is a comic book thing that I just wish would die. Like, it's been covered. It's been covered incredibly well. They've moved past it multiple times. And I mean, I get it. Like, insecurity, it's going to come in waves with Ben because of how he looks. So I understand it. But sometimes it's just like, come on, do we really need to go back to this? Well, and sure enough, she's like, no, you big dummy. Like, I only have eyes for you. They don't work, but I only have them for you. And then, like, Ben takes one look at the statue and is like, oh, holy shit, that's, I think it's Jeff Mann. And he's some millionaire who's disappeared. And so then it cuts to an arcade, and Luke Cage and Iron Fist are playing a game called The X Factor, and getting beat by it and pissed off. Crowd of kids is gathering around, and then Benny, their kind of like street informant guy, shows up because they are, wouldn't you know it, looking for Jeff Mann. And so then they go, like, Ben goes into investigation mode to look for him. Power Man and Iron Fist go into investigation mode. And so that is what this is. This is like a classic, this is a perfect, like, classic 80s, like, why did I just draw a blank on it? It's just like, this is the perfect episode of a, like, cop show where they're, like, trying to find somebody who went missing. And that's exactly what Marvel 2-in-1 is in this issue. It's like straight up 80s television show. And so Power Man eventually finds him. And they're going to, like, bring him back to the people that are looking for him. And Ben's just like, this dude's in a world of hurt. We need to get him. And he's, like, going by the word of his lady. And so this, of course, they are at odds. This is great. This is why we're going to get a punch-up between Power Man and the Thing. My money is 100% on the Thing. And sure enough, over the next couple of pages, we get Ben Grimm absolutely hammering Power Man through buildings and just letting him have it. And then this is the part where I was like, oh my God, Danny's an idiot. So he winds up taking the dude with him while Ben's fighting Power Man, and he goes to the place, like the corporate conference room of J-Man Incorporated. Iron Fist is receiving an unpleasant surprise of his own, and he's at what looks like a completely villainous boardroom, as most are. And so they're quickly like, oh, we thought both of you were going to be here. We can't pay you for finding him. unless both of you were here at the same time. And Danny's like, well, your insistence is unusual, but very well, I'll go get Luke. And I'm just like, you're an idiot. You're an idiot. Like, I'm not even a private investigator, hero for hire, martial artist from the city of Kunlun. And even I was like, oh, these guys are fucking bad. They're bad. And he's like, oh, you needed both of us here to cut that check? All right, I'll go get my guy. And then we'll stand over this mysterious floor thing that is no doubt going to open up, and we're going to drop into it into some pit of despair. So Iron Fist goes back, uses his chi on Ben, and that ends that. And so then they go back to the boardroom, and lo and behold, these ding-dongs are standing on the very thing they shouldn't have been standing on. And what happens? You betcha. Dropped into some danger room-esque type of thing that has taken the two of them on. So then Ben's like, they told me to wait 10 minutes outside, then I got to go in. So he kicks down the door. He goes up there. And what does he do? Stands on the big thing. Dumb. So then he gets dropped in there. But it turns out that this thing is like reacting to their power levels, and Iron Fist is like, whoa, thing's too powerful, it's overloading. And so they eventually get out of that thing, take down the boardroom guys, and Jeff Man is left to his own devices. And then it turns out, and I don't know why, like this came out of nowhere, but he's just like, Jeff Man is the guy who created that X Factor video game. And it just shows Ben playing at the very end. But I was like, okay, it could have just been a game that they were playing. It didn't need to suddenly tie into it was just a weird, like, oh yeah, I played that because it worked out my escape fantasy. I was like, that is bizarre. But it was a fun issue, regardless of that weird thing. And hey, POV cover. Last book that I would have picked up, August 24th, 1982. Spider-Woman, number 47, Twisted. Written by Ann Nocenti, pencils by Brian Postman, inks by Carl Potts, letters by Rick Parker, and colors by Ben Shawn. This issue, I enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed it. I didn't know if I was going to cover this because part of me was like, I only wanted to get the Spider-Woman issues that were written by Chris Claremont. And I did, and I read them all, and I was like, that's okay. Which was good, because it was one of those things where, like, when it comes to X-Men, nobody can beat Chris Claremont. And so I was happy to read something where I was like, yeah, this is good, but I don't need to, like, revisit it all the time. And I was like, I might just call it quits on Spider-Woman there, but I have issues 47, 48, and 49. So I was like, if I have the issues, it's being pulled in. That's how it goes. I don't make the rules. I do make the rules. I absolutely 100% made the rules. So, this opens up with a dude burying another guy alive. Which, you know, top 10 fears. I don't know what your guys are. I don't like sinkholes. Sinkholes freak me out, man. So sinkholes are higher than being buried alive, but being buried alive would still suck. Not a fan. Spider-Woman swoops in, stops this from happening. The dude that was getting buried alive, we don't know why. Because I don't, like, pretty sure the last issue that I read was a Chris Claremont one that just sort of ended. So this is a new start. I'm like, damn, Nocenti ain't messing around. So she takes on that guy. Then she goes back to her apartment with Lindsay McCabe. They're basically discussing, you know, life, what's going on, so on and so forth. And then it cuts to Stark International building in LA. Bill Foster is working on some stuff. It's nice to see Bill Foster. And this kid walks in. And I was like, oh, this is ominous. Because you just get the shadow of him. It startles Bill, right? And I'm like, oh man, this opened up with a dude getting buried alive. And now we've got this guy sneaking up on Bill Foster in his lab at Stark International. And then it cuts to this little tiny dude, and he's like, hey man, I need to figure out how to get big because I'm a dancer and nobody pays attention to me because I'm a short dancer. And I was like, this fucking took a turn, but I love it. I'm so happy that I didn't give up on this after Chris Claremont left the book. So he basically explains that, like, he wants to be a dancer. The dance is in him. He wants to give the dance to people. But every, like, casting director is an absolute asshole to him. And so he's like, I need some Bill Foster Giant Man juice to, so I can get big and I can be a dancer. And Bill Foster's like, that's not how that works, kid. And so he's like, the hell it is. And then he karate kicks him in the face, or dance kicks him. And then he legitimately, this is the part where I'm like, this is off the charts. Crazy. This dude just legitimately just starts grabbing whatever he can off the counter and drinking it. And he's like, hope one of these works, as he leaves. And all of a sudden he slowly starts to grow slightly bigger. And so he's pirouetting around the parking lot after dance kicking Bill Foster in the face. And then all of a sudden it starts to go south, as you knew it would. And dude realizes, oh no, I've turned myself into a freak. So it cuts to more chit chat between Lindsay and Jessica as they discuss, like, you know, Jessica's basically like, hey, I really appreciate the fact that you know about my alter ego, because I wish I could tell my boyfriend David that, because I shouldn't have secrets. What should I do? And it's that type of thing. And then they eventually show up at Stark International, and Bill Foster's all bandaged up. He's talking to Jessica and explains kind of like, hey, I need your help, like, tracking this dude down, because he just willy-nilly drank potions or whatever chemical mixtures in my office, and I have no idea what they're going to do to him, but he's basically a time bomb right now. And so then this dude shows up and goes to a dance theater and introduces himself as the creepy-ass Daddy Longlegs, and terrifies this poor woman and does a very destructive dance. And so then Jessica is going around town trying to find the short dancer, can't do it. And then she finally gets to a place where they're like, oh yeah, like, he was here, he was smashing up the joint, and she keeps on seeing this poster. So she's like, huh, if I'm seeing this poster everywhere and it's sticking out to me, maybe it is to him too. And so you get a couple panels of these people waiting outside for this show, and then you realize this dude is one of the trees. And he sneaks into the building and then does his ginormous dance. I know, you're loving it. And these panels in here of the crowd, I absolutely adored, because this dude is doing his freaky Daddy Longlegs dance, and Lindsay is like, hey Jess, is this the guy? And she's like, afraid so. And then somebody else in the audience is like, is this a joke? And somebody else in the audience is like, this is embarrassing. And then somebody else was like, this was the one that got me, is like, I think this is art. And then another guy was like, if I wait and see what everyone else does. And so people start laughing. And so that guy who was like, I gotta wait for everybody else to see what they're doing. And he's like, oh, they're all laughing, I'll laugh too. And I just thought, for me, personally, that was a nice little, you know, I've often discussed that one of my least favorite things about the internet and comics and movies and things like that is groupthink, where, like, you know, there's somebody out there that's like, oh, I think this is garbage, and then everybody else is suddenly like, yeah, it was. That always bums me out. So Jessica decides that in this she's going to start taunting this dude to get him out of the building so he doesn't hurt anyone else in there, and that's basically what she does. And then the two of them start fighting, and that's kind of where we're at. She does her little bioblast thing. He is lamenting this. She climbs him like a building and uppercuts him into oblivion, ties him up with a fence, and he is basically like begging her to kill him at this point, because he's like, if I can't dance, then what's my life worth, so on and so forth. And it's heartbreaking. And he's like, she's like, well, maybe there's a cure. And he's like, to turn me back into what I was, a small useless man with broken dreams. And so he's like, just kill me. And she's like, no. And she's like, I'm gonna go get help. And then when she turns around, he's gone. And that was the end of that. But I was like, man, I wasn't even gonna read this. I was probably gonna throw it in the to pass out at Halloween pile, because I'm thinking I'm only probably gonna keep the Claremont Spider-Woman issues. And then the second I turned the page and this ominous shadow was like, Bill Foster, I just want to dance. I was like, I am keeping this issue forever. And that is the beauty of reading all your comics and Cornerbox Classics. So, that's Cornerbox Classics this week. We are into, next week will be the last week of August 1982. So yeah, if you picked up any of those issues as they were coming out, please let me know what you thought of them. If there are any in there when you hear me talking about them and you're like, holy smokes, I'm going to check that out because that sounded delightful, I would love to hear about that, genuinely. That makes me so happy, because there's no part of anything that I do on this channel that is trying to sway anyone to buy anything. I just need to talk about comics that I like, to try to put some positivity out there in the world. Yeah, I just want to talk about why I love comics. So if in any way, shape, or form that were to cause you to be like, oh, I should check that comic book out, that would delight me. And if you decide that you've never given Yazoo's Upstairs at Eric's a shot, please do so, and also let me know what you think of that, because it is a fantastic record. So, yeah. Thanks for following along with this, and I will see you on Wednesday for New Comic Book Wednesday. Bye.